is mine. This is Rachel. I've never met her. No, she's only 9 months old.
So, first of all, I'll say that people often ask me if I'm not of 3 places, and why is the show titled Of 2 Places? And I say that yes, I am of 3 places, but the 2 places that created the person that I am today are Israel and the US. South Africa factors in 2 ways. One, English is my native language, and unbeknown to me, and it will come back to play a huge role in my identity later on, the apartheid. So when we left South Africa, it was still apartheid. Nelson Mandela was still in jail. I didn't know that that would be such a seminal part of my quest for social justice. About 2 years ago, I was visiting Israel, and my oldest sister is an archaeologist that focuses a lot on cultural heritage and the conservation of cultural heritage. What does it mean to own your heritage, to renew old crafts, old traditions? And she's worked a lot in the north of Israel, particularly in the city of Akko, which is a mixed Arab-Israeli city. And she and I have these incredible existential discussions about what it is to be, who owns heritage, who owns hummus, for instance, where does it come from, you know, who has ownership over it, is it a Palestinian food, is it a Lebanese food, is it Israeli food, who owns hummus? So we have these awesome conversations. While that is not my story, I too have a dual identity. And feel extremely loyal to both the places that I have lived in and live in currently. So it started me on this identity quest in terms of who am I? Can I make art that talks about being of 2 places? A few things that weave through the show, some of them are subtle and some of them are very visible. First of all, I need to say this up front, that the place that I approach my immigration story is a place of white privilege. I feel lucky that I was able to come here through chain migration speaking English. And I have to say that up front because that is not the case for the majority of people trying to get into the US today. The things that weave through the show are language, which is when you think about what it means to be an immigrant today coming here and not speaking English, the disadvantage out the gate that you face is tremendous. So it's about language, it's about family, it's about the loss and the gain of moving. It is, it's about a sense of place. Where is home? I go to Israel, and I've been out of Israel now for 20 years, and I don't think I'm considered an Israeli anymore by Israelis. And I come here, and the second sentence people ask me is, where am I from? So the work on this show became both extremely personal about my story, but also from the place of my white privilege, it became a charge forward. So the materials for this show were sourced both in Israel and here. There are objects here that came from my mother's home, flea markets in Jaffa and Haifa. Everything in the show is extremely symbolic to me. And say that of all the pieces, this is a piece that speaks to that most. But what it really told me is that this is the face of our nation right now. We're broken, we're tattered, we're walked on, we're unwhole. I added the barbed wire as a homage to those who are trying to make their way here under the most dire of circumstances. The chuppah that you entered under, which is a traditional wedding canopy, was made of two flags, the American and the Israeli flags, which I then went to work on. I cut them up and wove them together. I realized how extremely, I knew already before how very Jewish I was, but how much my art is affected by my Judaism. And particularly as it comes to certain issues of social justice. The talit, which is hanging in the back over there. So a talit is a prayer shawl. It's a very ancient ritual object that Jews have been wearing and using for thousands of years. And primarily used on Shabbat, on the Sabbath, and during the high holidays in Temple. And when you actually wrap yourself in a talit, when you actually clothe yourself, it is a very holy moment to actually say a blessing. You kiss the four corners of it, and there's a real element of humility, of reverence, of observance, of mindfulness that you actually wrap yourself in. The traditional talit has a prayer on it that you say when you wrap yourself. You say, Baruch atah Adonai, and to cover myself with the tzitzit. The tzitzit are the fringes that come out of the talit. In the traditional one, there are 613, which are the 613 commandments that some Jews observe. Mea culpa. So I decided actually to remove the traditional prayer and put Emma Lazarus' poem on it. So the poem that is at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty now resides in my larger-than-life talit as a reminder of, for myself, of what it is to be a Jewish liberal woman today, and of what my charge forward is to be in terms of my activism. So the manifesto at the back, hanging on the wall there, which I envision myself maybe one day carrying as a white flag, was hand-stitched, and that's the last piece I made in the show, deliberately hand-stitched and not written in pen or ink or anything else. Since about 2014, every time I come home from Israel, I bring newspapers with me for no good reason other than being a hoarder to aggravate Kevin. But now I know why. It's because as the time came to make a piece about my core values, I went to a very familiar material, which is newspapers. And so the comforter came together, and then it begged the question, what was it going to be placed on? So I went to a very familiar material. I've told you I grew up on a farm. I used to collect eggs from chickens every day after school. So I went to a very familiar material, which is chicken wire. And the interesting thing about when you make art is the material starts to tell you what it wants to be. And the final thing that I decided to do was to end this piece with plastic zip ties. We all know what plastic zip ties are used for nowadays on the southern border. And so the whole headboard is held together with zip ties. And the last piece I'll point out is this one. So this is my Shabbat table. It is made of all the Jewish recipes I grew up on, taken out of my the cookbooks that live in my mother's home, and have been written by great grandmothers, great aunts, people who are no longer alive, and yet the tradition is alive and well. And I think it's a true story about every immigrant, that food is core, the cultural food that you came from carries deep meaning. And I decided I wanted to celebrate, once again, the woman in my life, and these napkins are actually ceramic. They're imprints of napkins that were made for us by my grandmother for our wedding. And the plates represent my family and people in my family who are no longer alive, but yet always still included in my Shabbat table. So I think through my story, I hope to shine a light on what it's like to be an immigrant, even when you come with a golden suitcase. It's still hard, and so I want people to think about what it might be to be an immigrant that doesn't have a golden suitcase.